He's back to talk wrestling once again. Mr. Connor Casey is here. Whoa, he's got a full helmet.
I got the memo. We were wearing stupid hats, so here I am.
Wow, he went from hats to helmets.
I was gonna
total
say
escalation.
he went all
right off the bat. Coming in like a true heel. Come on in, Connor.
What's going on, fellas? And
what's
going on?
What's up, man? So ComicBook Nation. Yes, Damon. Yes, it is. That is our new name, ComicBook Nation. So of course we are here to talk about, we're actually going to talk about a little bit of everything, because we're going to talk about AEW and WWE, because we just have Full Gear. And we're also going to dive into, of course, Survivor Series War Games happening this Saturday. But let's just take a step back and look at Full Gear, because it was a big show. And as we had talked about before, it was kind of a turning point show. We wanted to see some things kind of clear the board a little bit and move AEW into the next chapter. Do you think that happened, Connor?
I think in some ways it did. It fixed a lot of problems that have kind of hung over AEW for the past 6 months or so. MJF winning the title has breathed new life into that main event scene. The Elite are back. They're paired up with Death Triangle. That's a fantastic 6-man pairing. The House of Black is back on this week's Dynamite. Ricky Starks is getting a little bit of a main event run. I would love to see him. You know, he had the tape, and if you were a WCW fan in the late 90s, if you didn't get any sort of DDP vibes there as he went into that match, I don't know what to tell you, but that's a fantastic role for Ricky, especially if they want to come back to that later. Jamie Hayter and Tony Storm blowing the absolute roof off the place. We then fixed the interim championship thing that we had talked about ad nauseum on last week's show. There were a lot of positives on this. It didn't even feel too long, which was the big worry that I had going into this one after the past few shows. Now, is everything fixed? No. The Ring of Honor situation is still unresolved, and I still feel like we're not getting that fixed until next year. JAS is on my TV way too much each week. Rampage still doesn't feel like must-see television, and I don't think there's any greater indicator of that than today's episode happening at about 3 o'clock. There are still issues that need to be resolved, but was this the right step forward? Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It is important to note that, like, the interim stuff happened on the Dynamite after. I would have loved for that to have happened at Full Gear, so that, like, Hater's big moment and like it, you know what I mean? Like, it would have just like happened all there, and then Hater could have just hit the ground running. But I do love that not only did we make that, and I know it was not something Khan wanted to do initially, and it wasn't something that, Rosa obviously wanted, but I'm glad they did that. And I'm also glad they retroactively made Storm's title run a full-on championship. That was the right thing to do, and that was awesome too. And I agree, like, having the Elite come back, I really think the MJF and the Regal swerve, like, all that stuff is good. That was all good. It is funny that I want to make sure I say it right, Kieda? C14, every match at Full Gear felt like they were all 30 minutes. I do feel like I don't feel like it was too long. I do feel like we crammed, like, I don't know how, I think it's just like time displacement, I don't know if it was a pacing thing or what. There were a couple matches that I was like, wow, these feel like super, super long. We could have tightened that up a little bit, but I think this was the first show in a while that I felt like at the end of it, I wasn't completely burned out. Like, I was high on adrenaline. That was a good ending. I came out of it with, like, those were great matches, and I didn't feel like the crowd was tapped out by the end. So I agree with you. I think it was a really good spot, and I think Dynamite furthered that. I think Dynamite really, like, they're on a really good course for the next event. So, moving on to Survivor Series. This is the first main roster War Games. So this is a big deal for if you've been a fan of War Games matches in NXT. Number one, there's a lot of NXT people involved in these War Games matches, so it's going to be fun there. And then, of course, there's already buzz and hype of, like, we've got a 5th spot remaining in the women's match. But of course, in this Triple H era, everyone's excited for, like, who might show up, who might, hop in. We'll start with the War Games matches. Which one do you think will steal the show? We have the men's match and the women's match, and both are stacked.
I think it's weird to label this as stealing the show because it will be the main event. but it's the men's War Games match. It kind of dawned on me, this will be the first time, at least on television, we've seen all 5 members of the Bloodline in a single match.
Yeah.
It was a rarity when we had Roman and the Usos in a 3-man, much less adding in Solo and Sammy into the equation.
Yeah.
I think, and this has been reported on, this is their first main roster War Games match. And for years to come, you're going to have to rely on the footage of this show to help promote the match. You can't just have the NXT clips, mostly because half the people involved in those matches are gone.
Yeah, they're not there.
So you're going to have, unless you want to heavily highlight Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly. I got some bad news for you. So no, they're going to pull out all the stops with that match. I think people will be talking about whatever they wind up doing with Sammy and Kevin long after this show ends. I think the women's match will do well. You've got some absolutely great, pieces in there. But I think the story that winds up getting told in the main event regarding the Bloodline, whether it's, hey, they actually take a loss when they're all together, or someone like Sammy pulling through and getting the win for them, that's something you can carry on going forward. I don't see a lot of that potential with the women's match. You will just go right back to, hey, Damage Control hates everybody. Rhea Ripley's great. Whoever that 5th woman is, I think I have a hunch who it is. How does she fit into the equation? That kind of all gets bogged down by the lack of momentum that Raw has. And the men's match will not have that problem.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think for the women's match, the women's match is the more experienced of the War Games matches, because most of those women have already done several of them. I mean, Dakota Kai, Io Sky, like they've all have those under their belts already. So I think from a I think as a match, that probably might be my favorite match. It really depends on who the 5th member is. Some of the rumors point to, there's rumors out there that point to Becky Lynch being that person. Of course, there's already, lots of people hoping it's Sasha Banks or Naomi. There's other people that like, hey, maybe Candice LeRae is not as hurt as they thought. She's in there. There's a couple of different ways that could go. It really depends on who that 5th member is for that match to really kind of, from a storytelling and from a impact spot. The men's match is the one that is going to be it's the Sami Zayn show. So whatever happens in that Bloodline match, the fact that it's all of them together, the fact that it's a lot of their first War Games matches anyway, because like Solo hasn't been in one, I don't believe, when he came in. So there's just so much you can do with that, and having Kevin Owens on the other team, that's just going to be must see TV. Like that's going to have to be. So yeah, for me, it's that too. I agree with you. What Triple H surprises do you hope to see?
So allow me to kind of stomp out a couple of theories here. I don't think it's Candice, simply because I don't think her showing up is a big enough of a, oh, hey, that's the 5th member. Because I don't think enough people have even noticed she hasn't been on TV in a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Sasha or Naomi, simply because that departure was so public that you're not going to bring back one without the other. The big conversation about those two has honestly been, what is Sasha going to do outside the company? If it's just Naomi coming back, everyone's going to go, okay, where's Sasha? And if there is no Sasha to show up, it'll be seen as a letdown. If just Sasha shows back up, everyone's like, okay, is Naomi like right behind her? Because she has no reason to not be here otherwise. She's not trying to be in a Star Wars series. Where is she? She doesn't have 5 different trademarks for what is clearly going to be some outside business ventures going on. It's just more of a, okay, when is this package deal coming along back? As for Becky, it all lines up. The timing of what her injury was versus the timetable of her return, the storyline that had been presented of, hey, it might have been the separated shoulder that in the match with Bianca that took her out, but we wrote that Damage Control was the one that actually put her on the shelf, and that can be readdressed. You kind of have to give something for Damage Control to do once they realize that, hey, we need to do something other than Bayley versus Bianca at the next pay-per-view.
Right.
We've already done that enough times now to where it's old, it's worn out, it's welcome. With Becky somehow getting added back into that mix, it does breathe some life into the equation. So it's got to be, honestly. I don't see it being an NXT call up. There's no one that's an obvious, hey, bring her up and put her with the baby faces. Sasha and Naomi, there's a lot of baggage there, and I feel like they want to save that return if and when it happens as a dual threat, like as them both coming back at once. And Candice, love her to death. Her coming back on Raw makes more sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't disagree with you. And I'll pop for a Becky as a person who's wearing his Becky sweater right now. I will pop for a Becky Lynch return as a face because I am so excited. We're moving past the heel face. Anything else you wanted to kind of add on top of those things?
Just that we'll have live coverage of this weekend for the whole show. I know it's Thanksgiving weekend, so a lot of folks are busy with families. But hey, wrestling and Thanksgiving were synonymous for decades, and I love that Triple H is bringing that back just a little bit by having this show on Saturday. On top of these War Games matches, you have AJ Styles versus Finn Balor.
It's gonna be good
every time those two get in the ring together. It's magic. We've got Ronda and Shotzi. Hey, give Shotzi a chance to shine on a big stage for once. That's, have her show up in the tank and take Ronda to the limit. And I don't think there will be any complaints. And for all coverage of that, you can check out comicbook.com's wrestling section and follow us on TikTok at Comic Book Wrestling. Why? Because good things will happen if you do.